This recording is part 5 in our series that covers the lymphatic system. It will introduce us to the adaptive immunity or our specific immunity and cover the different forms of adaptive immunity. A subsequent recording will cover a little more in depth the T cell and antibody-mediated immunity. Now, specific immunity, or otherwise known as adaptive immunity, is protection against very specific disease-causing agents or pathogens or byproducts of those pathogens. It is our third line of defense. Now, our immunity is based on our ability to distinguish self from non-self, what belongs to us and which is foreign to us. Now, we have, again, two different branches of adaptive immunity. We have cell-mediated immunity, which involves T cells. Okay, so it involves T cells. Now, with this picture, actually, here's a lymphocyte, and say that is a cytotoxic T cell. This here would be, say, a macrophage. And one of the things that we'll have to talk about in this subsequent recording is how that macrophage presents a pathogen to a T cell. But the cell-mediated immunity does involve direct physical and chemical attack. And so they release things like toxins and promotes things like phagocytosis, and that will end up killing our pathogen, okay? So it destroys the pathogen. We also have our humoral immunity or antibody-mediated immunity. So I'm just going to abbreviate antibodies, AB, mediated immunity. That involves our B cells, and the B cells will develop into what we call plasma cells. And the plasma cells produce these antibodies, and they attack the pathogens by using these circulating antibodies, which ultimately results in destruction of the pathogen. Now, a couple things to kind of make a note, what you see down here is the humoral immunity. Humor has to do with like tissue fluids. Is the B cells will kill pathogens that are in body fluids, but T cells attack infected cells, cells been infected with a pathogen, or abnormal cells. So there's a difference. In one of the things that I would like, and I'm going to post it for you, is there will be actually come back here. Actually, I don't have it. There will be a link to a video that's on YouTube that kind of goes over the adaptive immunity, and it is specifically going to address, the use of B cells in attacking like bacterial infections. Now, one of the things I do want to cover, and actually it's going to be, this is where the link is going to be, but I will post it separately on Canvas for you, is when we have different types or forms of adaptive immunity, and I want to talk about active versus passive and naturally acquired versus artificially acquired. Now, if I use the term active versus passive, is the question you ask yourself, who produced antibodies? If you produced the antibodies, that is active. If something else produced the antibodies and they were given to you, that is passive. You didn't do any work. Now, natural versus artificially acquired immunity. This is the method in which the antigen or antibody were introduced into the body. So we'll say method in which antigen or antibody was introduced into the body. So, for example, is if I got sick because my daughter was sick, because I'm hang around her, that's naturally acquired. If I'm injected with something that causes me to have an immune response, that would be artificially acquired. So that just an example is like how the antigen, or in case if we talk about antibodies, have been introduced to the body. So we're going to be looking at 4 types: naturally acquired active, artificially acquired active immunity, and naturally acquired passive immunity, and artificially acquired passive immunity. So the first one is naturally acquired active immunity. So here it's because of an infection. So this picture is showing what actually does exist is chickenpox party. And I didn't know that they were called chickenpox parties, but my mom actually technically had a chickenpox party, but she didn't invite other kids. What she did is she invited all her kids because my oldest sister got the chickenpox from kids at school. She came home and she made sure the rest of us hung around with her very closely, so we all got chickenpox at the same time, so she didn't have to be long and drawn out and take care of us. So you've been exposed to someone that's been ill, so it's a naturally environment that you acquired that antigen, and you are going to produce the antibodies to that. And this type of immunity is the longest lasting. So if you've been exposed to it and you got sick yourself, and you produce the antibodies and you produce the various memory T cells and B cells, this lasts pretty much a lifetime. The artificially acquired active immunity, great example of that would be, say, a vaccination. So you're going to be injected by, say, a physician with the antigen, and with vaccines is that the antigen has been attenuated or weakened, where it should not get you ill, but if you do, it's usually mild, but your body will develop an immunity to whatever you've been vaccinated against. Is you're producing the antibody, so it's active, but how you were exposed to the antigen was not natural, it was artificial. So vaccinations are great examples of this. Now the naturally acquired passive immunity, the great example of this is either breastfeeding, which you see here, or the immunity given to the baby from the mother, and it's antibodies that have crossed the placenta, which would be the IgG type of antibodies. The breast milk has an IgA type of antibodies, and that's one of the things that we'll talk about in a subsequent recording, is the different types of antibodies. Now, the naturally acquired is, a baby or, a fetus developing in the mom, that's natural. Breastfeeding is natural. Now, the reason why they call it passive is the baby did not produce the antibodies, the mother did. So they're maternal antibodies. Now, the thing is with this, though, is the immunity that it's given to the baby from the antibodies produced from the mom is relatively short acting. At some point in time, the baby will have to develop its own antibodies against the antigens. But babies, it is true, babies that are breastfed are healthier longer, as long as they're being breastfed. But this is the antibodies given to the baby. They're actually being given antibodies, and they're given them from the mom. Now, an example of artificially acquired passive immunity is things like anti-venom, where they have taken venom from snakes or spiders or other poisonous animals. They take these venom, and they have antibodies produced by, say, like horses and rabbits, where they inject these animals, but small enough doses not to kill the animal, but other animals produce the antibodies. Then, say, if you've had a snake bite, is that you're given this anti-venom, which is just antibodies, and what happens is those antibodies will mask those antigens, and it's going to prevent you from dying. And because the thing is, often is your immune response will not be fast enough to prevent you from dying, so they need these artificially produced antibodies. Another example of an artificially acquired passive immunity would be the use of Rhogam, and Rhogam is given to pregnant women who are Rh negative. Now, before I kind of go through that real quickly, is again, it's artificially acquired, is you're being injected with these antibodies, and it's passive is something else produced the antibodies. So you're transferring antibodies produced by something else, and I say something because it could be an animal, and then you're injected with it. Now, but some things are produced in a laboratory, these monoclonal antibodies. So monoclonal means it's one clone, that they're all identical. Now the Rhogam, so you see a little picture of the Rhogam. I got a Rhogam shot because I'm Rh negative, and any pregnant female who is Rh negative will be given Rhogam shots. And the Rh negative woman has no Rh positive antibodies, and you want to keep it that way. Is if she's carrying an Rh positive child, there is a chance there will be a mixing of blood between the baby and the mother will start developing antibodies against the Rh antigen, which is actually the D antigen. Now, it takes a little bit of time, so that first baby is not really a problem, but any subsequent pregnancies, it will be a problem. Or if that woman's actually accidentally given a transfusion of blood that's Rh positive, she'll have a transfusion reaction as a result of it. So what they do is to prevent the mother from developing the antibodies herself, they're given Rhogam. It's an intramuscular injection. They give it early on in pregnancy, and then within 72 hours after the baby's born. And what it's doing is it's going to prevent, it's actually going to mask any antigens that may appeared in the blood, and it's going to prevent her from developing an immune response. Now, this has to be given with every pregnancy. Okay, so this is not long lasting. So any future pregnancy, the mother still will get Rhogam. Now, last thing I want to talk about in this recording is properties of immunity. So our adaptive immunity is that adaptive immunity is specific. So it exhibits specificity. So we're going to respond to a specific antigen. You have to be able to, at any point in time, be able to confront any antigen, so we have to be versatile. So it exhibits what we call versatility. And the one good thing, this is like the basis behind, like I talked about with vaccines, or I never had a vaccine for chickenpox because I got the chickenpox, but I have developed an immune response to it, and I have memory cells that if I'm exposed to chickenpox again, I'm going to fight that off very quickly, and I'm never going to get sick. Now, we also have the immunity, though, has to have some sort of tolerance. So you must be able to respond to foreign substances, non-self, but ignore your normal tissues or yourself. So we have to be able to distinguish between self and non-self. But you do have conditions where we have too little tolerance or too much tolerance. So autoimmune diseases like Graves' disease or myasthenia gravis, here you've got too little tolerance. Here we're attacking your own body cells. With immune deficiency, you have too much tolerance. So here you're allowing these pathogens, and we're not fighting them off, and then we're going to get sick. So if you're immunodeficient, you get sick a lot. So this is where we have extremes, where you have too little tolerance or too much tolerance. So the next recording is going to go more specifically into our types of immunity in regards to cell-mediated and antibody-mediated immunity.